I asked AI to predict Bitcoin's year-end price, and the response was surprisingly nuanced. Also, in this weekly update, I will get to your comments and questions about the treasure hunt from last Saturday's episode featuring Prashanth, founder of Bringin. And finally, there is another security update, a phishing attempt that I want to alert you to so that your sats remain safe. But first, so I asked Claude, Grok, Gemini, and ChatGPT to predict Bitcoin's year-end price because, let's face it, people speak most in general about Bitcoin's price. And the responses they gave were surprisingly nuanced. And it goes to show that, AI has developed to a point where today they list the multiple variables that are at play that impact Bitcoin's price. Case in point. Last Wednesday, August 19th, no one could have predicted that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent would announce a bond buyback. Okay, so a bond buyback isn't quite quantitative easing. Instead of buying back $2 million worth of bonds, the Treasury Department has decided to double that amount to $4 million, which is really not that much given the size of the bond market. However, what it seems to be pointing to is a big print in the pipeline. Shout out to Lepard for writing the book called The Big Print about monetary debasement. If you haven't read it and you're still on your Bitcoin learning journey, I highly recommend you pick it up to understand the mechanics that are going on in the background. But it would seem that the act of doubling the bond buybacks is being interpreted by large market participants large enough to move the price of Bitcoin that something is off and that the Fed will be forced to eventually print money. So when the announcement was made last Wednesday, the 19th of August, the Bitcoin price was trading at about $64,000. Today, as I record, the price is about $77,000 US dollars, which is quite a substantial jump, given the fact that before this announcement was made, the Clarity Act seemed dead in the waters until at least mid-September, and there weren't any other market variables that would point to a bump in the Bitcoin price. Bitcoin supply remains stable. The inflation schedule or the issuance of new coins every 10 minutes is unchanged. And so the outside variables, the external factors impacting price movement comes from this crazy, circumstance that the U.S. seems to find itself in, where its national debt just crossed $40 trillion. $40 trillion. And with high yields on bonds, the expense, the amount of money it costs to pay interest alone on that debt is just astronomical. So now, I guess the Treasury finds itself in a very peculiar situation. What is it going to do to bring down at least the expense cost? And so this bond buyback program seems to be signaling to large institutions, at least, and humble plebs like myself, that there may be a big print in the pipeline. We'll see how things pan out, but it goes to show that, AI is not good at predicting what will happen in the future unless we start to program it to make choices on our behalf, which I don't think that's going to happen. But it is really good at telling us what's happened in the past and with basic things like algorithmic trading. So we shall see how things pan out. Speaking of, Bitcoin price, if you tuned in on Saturday, you saw the full interview featuring Prashanth, founder of Bringin. You saw all 12 clues for the treasure hunt. And if you did watch the live premiere, you would have seen the link to find the passphrase. So just a reminder to make sure that you're subscribed, that you turn on notification bells, and you do your best to tune into the premiere because I do drop things in the chat for you. I have one person who is also participating in Orange Manufacturing Group's treasure hunt, claiming to have found all 12 words, and he really wants to know where the passphrase can be found. And he didn't tune in, I guess, during the premiere, so he'll have to wait until this weekly update is published. But I want to get to some of your questions. So off the bat, I just want to say that I'm grateful that you have spent your time trying to decipher the clues in order to find the seed phrase, which is all 12 words. If you think that you found the seed phrase and you DM me with all 12 words, I'm not going to validate that for you. That's not fair for the other people. And frankly, I don't have the time to go through all of my DMs and say, yes, this is correct. No, that's not correct. So I'm not going to tell you what, the 12 words are, and I will not tell you what the passphrase is. But I will say that you can find the passphrase here. And I will also include a link to this in the pinned comment down below. Another question that I had. So my background is Trinidad and Tobago, and my cultural heritage, my Caribbean heritage does influence some of the clues because it's not obvious. And I do know that people watch from all over the world. So this was a very specific question, so I will help you with this. The question is, what does ting, T-I-N-G, what does ting mean? I'm not going to tell you what it means, but I'll just say to you, Google ting, T-I-N-G plus Caribbean, and that should help you with that specific clue. And just to close things out this week, I would like to remind everyone to never, ever, ever, ever input your seed phrase in any online device, in response to any email, in response to anyone reaching out to you to allegedly help you. With this cold card exploit, the phishing scams have become a little bit more sophisticated, and it seems as though, these scammers are contacting people on the premise of entropy, ensuring that there's sufficient entropy in your seed phrase. Shout out to Stefan or Smithy on X for sharing his experience, including screenshots that you should definitely check out, because it seems as though users of the Treasure wallet are being targeted with a sophisticated phishing attempt whereby they're questioning the entropy of the user's seed phrase, and as a result the prompt is leading you basically to ensure that there's sufficient entropy by entering your seed phrase into their system. Don't do it. Don't fall for it. If you've been tuning in to Ask a Bitcoiner 21 questions for any amount of time, you see how easy it is for someone else, another person or entity, to sweep a wallet as soon as they have the seed phrase. If you add a passphrase, you have a little bit more security, if you will, even though I don't like to use that word, depending on how difficult it is to find that passphrase. There's something that I've said this before, many people have said this before, but I want to clarify about the concept of ownership and custody when it comes to Bitcoin. No one owns their Bitcoin. I know this is very counterintuitive and it's against sort of the freedom ideology that we always speak about, but you don't own Bitcoin. You have custody of your Bitcoin. What is the difference between ownership and custody? Ownership does not exist in the online space, period. End of discussion. Custody means that you control the private keys, and because you have control of it, you can decide where you want to move your Bitcoin or your sats. As soon as someone else gets control of those private keys, they too can decide where those sats will move. So it is so important that you remember to never, ever, 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 ever share your seed phrase with anyone, with, any online prompt. Do not do it because you will no longer have custody of your Bitcoin. Ownership in this space does not exist. It's a nice concept, but it doesn't exist. If someone else has your keys, they've got your coins. If your keys have low entropy, it'll be easier for someone else to take your coins. So continue to tune in to Ask a Bitcoiner 21 questions. If you have specific questions, drop them in the comments, send me a DM. I will address them as we move along, and just practice self-custody. Even if you don't sweep the wallet, in Saturday's episode, the bounty was 71,000 sats, which is about 56 US dollars. Even if you don't win the bounty, at least the exercise and the practice will help you to understand self-custody basics, which is growing increasingly important as we move forward. Have a fantastic week. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next episode.